I blinked again, pretending her words were just a draft of fog that would fade if I ignored them. But they lingered, echoing louder the more I tried to forget. Calla stood taller, like she'd declared liberation. My silence, to her, must have seemed like permission. That night, she dressed like she hadn't in years, black lace, perfume thick like temptation. She said she was going out with Lyra. No kiss. No goodbye. Just a laugh and the sound of the door locking behind her. I sat at the edge of our bed, watching shadows crawl along our wallpaper, tracing memories that had already begun to rot. My phone buzzed, an alert from a rideshare app. Calla had taken one to an address she'd never spoken of. Curiosity didn't drive me. Instinct did. I followed. Quietly. Distant headlights. She never turned around. The car stopped outside a boutique hotel, tall, discreet, made for secrets. From my seat, I watched her greet him. Not Lyra. Not another friend. A man. Tall. Hands confidently casual. They embraced like practiced dancers, his hand low, her breath warm against his cheek. I took a photo. Not for revenge. Not for evidence. For reality. To stop myself from dreaming she hadn't. Back home, I stared at my reflection. The man looking back had wrinkles born from devotion. Eyes tired from trying. Mouth trained in silence. I didn't rage. I didn't destroy anything. I just sat. Until the sun rose. She returned around 5, hair slightly undone, lips glossed again. Not for me. Her smile faltered when she saw me awake. I asked nothing. She said nothing. We existed like actors playing parts in a forgotten play. Lyra called me toxic 2 days later. Said I was suffocating Calla's growth, that monogamy was outdated, unnatural. Her voice slithered through the phone like a snake wearing perfume. I ended the call before she could finish her little TED Talk on open-hearted enlightenment. But the poison stuck. Calla was distant now. No longer hiding. She spoke of needs, and connection, and sovereignty. Words that meant less and less the more she said them. She spent more time outside. Spent more money. Stopped wearing her ring. And yet, she smiled more. She laughed louder. She became the version of herself she'd buried years ago, long before our vows ever slipped between our fingers. I'd built a life for two. She'd decided to share hers with many. One night, after another whispered phone call, she turned to me and said, "Why are you still here?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Was it pride? Fear? Or was it the dying ember of a man who still loved the ghost in her skin? I knew I couldn't keep living inside this cage she'd unlocked for herself. I needed to shift. I needed to evolve, just like she had. But differently. Where she chose indulgence, I would choose intention. Where she chased chaos, I would master clarity. And where she lied, I would wait. Patiently. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't rage. It was strategy. And I had just begun to build my blueprint. I started observing her, not just watching. Her tells, her patterns. The way her fingers danced across her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. How her giggles now belonged to someone else. She was drifting, piece by piece, like watching a balloon rise higher with every snipped string until it vanished into a sky it never asked permission to fly through. Calla stopped cooking. Stopped asking about my day. Stopped noticing when I didn't come home right after work. I stayed late, not because I needed to, but because she didn't need me. Not anymore. One night I came home to find music playing, soft jazz, unfamiliar. Her heels lay near the door. 2 wine glasses waited on the counter. I walked in, silent, heart hammering, not with suspicion anymore, but with resignation. She stepped into view wearing a silk robe I hadn't seen in years. It used to be for me. It used to mean something. Her face froze when she saw me. The flicker of annoyance in her eyes betrayed the lie she almost told. I didn't ask. I just walked past her, up the stairs, into the silence of the guest room. That night I dreamed of fire. Dreamed of standing in a field, flames licking everything we built, and Calla dancing through the inferno like a goddess who knew nothing of loss. In the morning, I began collecting pieces. Passwords. Shared bank statements. GPS data from the car we once picked out together. She thought I wouldn't look. She underestimated stillness. But I was learning something dangerous: how to quiet my emotions, how to turn pain into precision. Lyra visited often now. Their laughter echoed in hallways I painted. She wore bold colors, like rebellion in fabric form. Smelled like smoke and citrus. She'd wink at me sometimes, like we shared some cruel joke I hadn't heard the punchline to. They weren't hiding it anymore. And maybe that was the worst part. One night, I walked into the kitchen and saw Calla straddling a stranger on the counter where we used to make pancakes. His shirt undone. Her hand on his chest. They didn't stop when I walked in. She froze when our eyes met. I didn't yell. Didn't scream. I set my keys down on the table and walked past them like they were just furniture in a house I no longer recognized. I locked myself in my room and listened to muffled voices behind walls that used to protect. The next day, she offered me tea. Tea, like infidelity, could be sweetened with honey and poured into ceramic peace offerings. I didn't touch it. I asked her one thing. Why? She bit her lip, shrugged. I wanted to feel alive again. I nodded. Inside, something in me cracked, but not from heartbreak. It was from clarity. Finally, I understood. It wasn't about me. Never had been. I was just the mirror she'd stopped looking into. I made love to my wife a week later. For the first time in months. Not because I wanted her, but because I wanted her to believe everything was fine. Because revenge, when brewed long enough, becomes flavorless. She kissed me after, whispered, "That was different." I smiled. It was. Because while she slept, I copied everything. Her phone's contents. Images. Texts. Every photo she ever sent him. Every message she ever typed in the dark. The next day, I scheduled a lawyer meeting. And another one, with Celine. She was a paralegal I met years ago, before the world changed. Smart, fierce, quiet. We started having coffee again. At first, just updates about paperwork. Then more. She'd ask how I was really doing. She didn't touch me, just saw me. It felt revolutionary. I didn't cheat. But I wanted her to know I could. Calla asked me where I'd been one night. She wore nothing but a towel and a hint of concern. Working late. She tried to pull me in. I kissed her forehead. Left her standing there. And the next morning, I placed divorce papers on her pillow, sealed with a note that said, "You wanted freedom. Here's your kingdom. Rule it alone." Her screams didn't shake me. Her crying didn't move me. Her hands clawing at my shirt didn't stop me from walking out that door, shoulders square, chest lighter than it had been in years. Outside, Celine waited. And when she looked at me, I didn't feel like a broken man. I felt reborn. Because when your heart's been shattered by betrayal, love isn't just healing. It's warfare. The world didn't end when I left Calla. It just changed shape. I moved into a quiet apartment on the edge of town. Small, clean, mine. Every creak in the floorboards was a reminder I'd chosen solitude over humiliation. Freedom didn't feel like joy at first. It felt like air after drowning, sharp, dry, unfamiliar. But still, I breathed. Celine visited often, not to save me, but to sit beside my silence without shrinking from it. Her laugh didn't demand anything. Her eyes didn't judge. We never talked about love. Not yet. She understood the need for time, how fractured men must rebuild bone by bone before they can offer someone a hand without shaking. Meanwhile, Calla spiraled. I knew it would happen. The moment her novelty wore off, when the thrill faded, when lovers stopped texting back or offering expensive nights out, she began dialing me again. First, it was logistics. Can you bring the tax documents? Then came nostalgia. Remember that night in Italy? Then desperation. I made a mistake. I never answered. Instead, I sent screenshots to my lawyer. Every call. Every message. Everything she claimed in court would be swallowed by the reality I documented. She thought she'd broken me. What she did was teach me how to stop bleeding for people who dance in knives. Lyra tried too. Messaged me once at midnight. Just a single sentence. She's nothing without you. I stared at it, laughed, deleted it. Because I wasn't here to rescue Calla. I wasn't her parachute anymore. I was the ground she chose to jump from. The court hearings were brutal, mostly for her. I walked in composed. Crisp suit. Clean haircut. Voice steady. I didn't smear her. I simply told the truth. And the truth, when wielded by the calm, sounds more like gospel than gossip. She cried in front of the judge. Painted herself as lost, misled. But then the exhibits were entered. Photos, texts, videos. Lyra's voice in audio recordings whispering about freedom, about how he'll never leave, about how he's too weak to walk. The courtroom went silent. Even the stenographer blinked twice. In the end, the judge didn't even look her way when the ruling was read. I got everything. The house. The car. Half her business shares, since I'd quietly helped fund it years ago, something she conveniently forgot. She stormed out before the final gavel. That night, I returned home, not to our old home, but the one I made for myself. Celine was waiting, sitting on my couch, barefoot, reading a book she knew I loved. She looked up, smirked. "You good?" I nodded. "I'm free." We didn't celebrate with champagne. We celebrated with silence. With breath. With the peace that comes from surviving someone else's storm. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. Celine and I began something, not rushed, not loud, not built from the ashes of ruin, but from slow glances and steady hands. She taught me to laugh again without guilt, to kiss without wondering who she thought about when our mouths met. Then one day, Calla showed up, rain dripping from her hair, mascara bleeding into her cheeks. She stood outside my building, clutching a photo of us from our wedding. "I didn't know what I had," she said. I didn't respond. "I was lost," she whispered. Still silent. "I miss you." And maybe once, those words would have broken me. Would have bent me back into her orbit. But that man died. The one who begged for loyalty from lips that only knew lies. The one who forgave until there was nothing left to salvage. I opened the door a crack. Enough for her to look in. To see Celine, barefoot again, laughing at a rerun on my couch. Enough to know she was too late. Then I closed it. No goodbye. No final word. Because sometimes, the deepest revenge is not punishing them. It's leaving them behind in the ruins they made. Alone. While you walk forward, untouched. And finally, unburdened. I stood in the mirror one morning, months after everything burned down. For the first time in years, the man staring back at me didn't look hollow. He looked lived in. Scarred. Weathered. But not broken. Not anymore. Celine stirred in the sheets behind me. Her breath steady. Her presence constant. I'd forgotten how healing sounded. Quiet, not desperate. She never demanded I be okay. Never tried gluing the fragments together. She simply sat beside the cracks, fingers tracing outlines like they were maps, not damage. We'd moved in together slowly. No announcements. No fireworks. Just toothbrushes side by side and mugs that matched without planning. No lies. No secrets. No shadows slithering under the doors at night. I never asked her to save me. She did it anyway, without trying. One night, she reached over and ran her hand across my chest. Just a touch. No motive. No heat. Just contact. "You ever think about her?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, but because I finally didn't feel the weight of it anymore. "Not really," I said. "Not like before." She smiled softly. Good. Because that was the truth. Calla had become a lesson. One I wouldn't forget, but no longer needed to carry. Revenge had scorched every illusion I once protected. And once the ashes settled, I learned something more powerful than retaliation: release. Still, the universe has a way of checking in. One evening, we attended a friend's art exhibit. Wine in hand, Celine by my side, my laughter filling rooms again. That's when I saw her. Calla. Across the gallery, alone. Dressed up, but tired around the edges. Makeup couldn't cover the regret. Time had begun its slow, merciless work on her. Eyes duller, posture uncertain, as if even standing tall now required effort. She saw me. Saw us. Celine leaned into me, whispered something sarcastic, and I laughed, loud, unbothered. Calla didn't approach. She couldn't. She turned and walked out before I could say anything. Or maybe because she knew there was nothing left to say. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in words. Sometimes, it arrives wearing your old wounds like armor and simply smiling in front of the person who tried to destroy you. After that night, I never saw her again. But occasionally, I'd receive a message from an unknown number. I miss who we were. I wish I could take it back. You didn't deserve it. I never replied. Because she was right. I didn't. But I deserved what came after. Celine. Peace. Quiet mornings. Even quieter nights. The feeling of arms wrapped around me without secrets between skin. No one teaches you what comes after betrayal. Most people get stuck there, looped in replaying the hurt, dragging it like a dead thing they can't stop mourning. But not me. Not anymore. I didn't just survive. I thrived. I didn't just move on. I ascended. Because revenge didn't end with her watching me walk away. It ended with her knowing I never looked back. And me, standing tall in a life rebuilt from the ruins, stronger, sharper, and no longer apologizing for demanding everything I deserve.